You're listening to the Cambridge Insider Podcast. On this episode, Stephen and Mariah welcome you back with an episode discussing the market recovery for international students and how schools should move forward in this momentum. Today's episode is sponsored by Norfolk Collegiate. Norfolk is a co-educational independent day school in Norfolk, Virginia, for students in pre-kindergarten through 12th grade. Keeping pace with a rapidly changing world is an objective that Collegiate embraces. Thanks for listening.
Cambridge Insider Podcast time. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first Cambridge Insider Podcast episode of 2023. A happy new year to all of our listeners all across the world, because we do have listeners all across the world. As always, welcoming my co-host, Mariah Thompson. How are you?
I am doing well. How about you, Stephen?
Also doing well, thank you. It's been a very positive start to the new year.
Yes.
At the Cambridge Network, we are all guns blazing and just, steamrolling our way into 2023, which is great. We're excited about, new students arriving soon for the spring semester and, students that have been here that are sharing some incredible experiences that they've had in the United States, over this festive period. So it's been really, really good. You've had a good start to the year, I presume?
Yes. It's my first year fully in Texas. It's actually my first podcast we're recording while being in Texas. So it's going to be 80 tomorrow, and that's new for me in January. So we love it. So it's a good 2023 for me.
Lucky you, lucky you. Before I get too jealous about the great weather that you'll be experiencing, I believe to kick off this new year, and we're going to be doing a little bit of a market update, a general update for our schools, for our our college partners as well, trying to situate yourself. It's the start of a brand new calendar year. Where's your international program? We want to be able to give you that information, give you a market update. I believe you have some great new data that you want to share with us.
Yeah, so as we're getting our own research and wanting to know things for our own selves, we always follow a company. They're called Open Doors. If you just type in Open Doors International Stats, you'll see them. But they always do throughout the year. They keep the statistics for us so we can know how the market is going. They're great. They're very reliable. So just recently, they put out their latest update from this last year. So we have some exciting stats we want to share with you all. And I'm going to ask Stephen some questions because he's our guy to know all the ins and outs for that. So he knows better than I what these mean and what mean for you. So to kick off this 2023 year, this first stat that we have now on Open Doors, it seems like their baseline now is, obviously we all know that COVID had a hit on us and it brought our numbers down. So that seems to be like the base rate now. Like everything we're talking about is from this like uprising scale from COVID. So since COVID, we have seen an 80% increase in international students around the world, adding up from K through 12 schools to undergrad, college students to graduate students. We're seeing that there are 1.2 million students ready and wanting to access international education. Stephen, what does that mean for these schools?
I mean, that's really, really positive news. I think, and you situated it really well. When you hear an increase of 80%, you get super excited. And I think it is news to get excited about, because what it essentially means for our industry is that we're seeing that recovery. At Cambridge Network, we spoke, often about the market was busy recovering and would recover. When we talk about market recovery, we are talking about a recovery, of course, from COVID. So when you see 80%, bear in mind that it's 80% from a COVID-stricken year.
Right.
So the baseline is super low. But again, 80% is super positive news. It means students are coming to the US. It means they are looking for international education. It means we're getting back to some sort of sense of normalcy when it comes to students looking for great options outside of their own country. That also means a market recovery from a saturated market, right? Because we slowly started seeing that market saturation pre-COVID. We predicted that, yes, we would see a little bit of an upturn and a little bit of a recovery from that saturated market, specifically as policies in the US on the political side eased a little bit and made it more welcoming for students to come in. Would we see and will we see a complete market recovery from COVID? Yes. Will we see a complete market recovery from a saturated market? Absolutely not. So that's important to remember. But from just what you've given me there, I really want our listeners to celebrate the fact that an 80% market recovery, 80% increase in the number of people and students searching for international education. That's great news. That's where we want to be. That's why we have this podcast. So that's a good place to start.
Yes. The second stat is that US is still the leading host destination for international students. Stephen, is this because of all the post-graduation things, basically like scenarios and situations that the US has lined up for post-graduation with lining up jobs or getting into college? Can you talk a little bit about that? And maybe that's probably why we're the number one?
Of course. So there, you're 100% right. That's one of the reasons. At the college level, we see a lot of students coming in, specifically looking not only at the number of incredible colleges that the US has to offer, but also looking at post-graduation. What are my options? In the US, again, I spoke a little bit about the new administration and what that meant for international education. The US provides incredible opportunities for students that have graduated to seek employment post-graduation. So that is a certain motivator. The number of great, options in terms of colleges we have, in many countries, number one, number two, number three top colleges in the country are really the ones that you look at. In the US, number 1 through 150, essentially, even probably more, are great programs. So students have a wide variety of different colleges in different areas of this great country that they can look toward, that, differing scales of programs, differing financial options. So that's a real positive side of it. I think on the high school level, it's also important to remember that students are still drawn by the fact that the US is, to a certain degree, that beacon of Western education. And that is a draw. For many of our students that we work with coming from Southeast Asia, that certainly is something they're looking towards. They're looking for that cutting edge information. They're looking for being at the forefront of new developing policies in education and what that means for their futures as well. The fact that we have great colleges in the US, I think, is also urging and continues to push students to come here at a younger level, at that high school K through 12 level, or K through 12, but specifically the high school level, and saying, I want to improve my English. I want to give myself the best opportunity to get into one of those colleges that's going to be my best fit. The best way to do that is to go to a great high school program, which we offer at Cambridge Network as well. So a couple of reasons why the US remains number one. And, we did go through a little bit of a scary phase. And I think it's something for all schools and colleges to be cognizant of, is the fact that there's competition out there. This is one of the reasons that has led to that saturated market that I spoke about just previously, is the fact that Canada, the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, all offer really good value programs, high level education, often at less of a cost. And that has increased that market saturation, because suddenly students are sitting anywhere in the world and going, okay, I can go to the US, but it's going to cost me X dollars. I can go for cheaper to Canada. I can go for cheaper to Australia, to the UK. So, when you are marketing your program, you've got to ask yourself, what's making me different? What am I doing from my program standpoint to stand out? We can certainly have this discussion with you. What am I doing to make sure that I'm visible, that I'm putting my program out there so that people, take me as one of their options when they do discuss with their families and look at options for international education? But it's good news that the US remains the number one option.
Yes.
It gives us that visibility. So very pleased about that. Again, the second one is also some really positive data. I love it.
Yes. We talked about college a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit more, a deep dive into that. For colleges, the top programs that international students are looking for are math and computer science and engineering programs. What does this mean for the colleges that focus on that? And then what is some tips and some encouragement for the colleges that aren't focusing on that? can you speak a little bit to that so they don't feel discouraged in that they can still move forward?
Of course, of course. We've seen this trend for quite some time. Is that sort of those STEM, directions are really the ones that students are coming to. The majority of students are coming for a degree in one of those sort of, STEM areas. Engineering, you mentioned, there's science, computer science, mathematics. That's really what students want to have. So if you are a college that specializes in programs like that, if you have great value to offer in those programs, make sure that students abroad know that. How are you marketing that program? I know from personal experience that every school and every college that we work with thinks that their program is the best. Your programs are great. We know it. We have done deep dives into how great your programs are. The reality is, though, and I mentioned it earlier, you have 150 other great colleges, even more across this country, that also offer great value programs. So the differentiator comes in, how do I market my program? How do I make a potential applicant see my value rather than the value down the road, or rather than the value on the West Coast or the East Coast or the middle of America? And the same can be said for schools. Students that want to study a STEM direction, and a degree in a STEM direction, high schools, it becomes then an integral part of what a student wants to do at your high school as well. Because if they are going to go on and study computer science, they want to have some computer science introduction, some computer science subjects and courses that they can take at the high school level. So at a high school level, if you're thinking about how am I marketing my program, that's a great focus for you, is to talk about your STEM program. What makes you unique? How do you advertise? How do you market that STEM program to potential students? For schools, specifically colleges that do not necessarily have those programs, don't despair. The fact is that yes, students come for those, but there are many, many students. And Mariah mentioned at the top end of this episode how many students there are that are coming into this country. Not all of them are coming for STEM. Yes, those are the majority. The reality is that schools that don't offer or don't specialize in those programs are typically smaller programs as well. And those smaller programs don't need 100 international students to make up a number that can add that diversity and add to their financial sort of strength and durability. They need 1 or 2 enrollments a year, 3 or 4 enrollments a year. So colleges that don't offer that, don't despair. Think again about what difference 1 or 2 international enrollments can make to your program. The great diversity, the great community and sense of community that they bring as an international student. And again, the question you've got to ask yourself is, whether you offer a STEM program or not, whether you're a college or a high school, what am I doing to show that value in my program? How am I marketing it? What platforms am I on? Because in this digital age, if you're not connecting with the young folk on that thing right there called the cell phone, and on this wonderful thing that we love to call the internet, you really are a step behind. So think to yourself, how am I doing that? Connect with Cambridge Network, and we can certainly have that discussion.
Yes, that's so good for them to just stay in reality of what their recruitment goals and not to get in comparison to the other schools. That's really good, helpful mindset for these schools. Last stat is still on the college sphere. But this stat is on the college sphere, but I'm assuming it's very close to similar for K through 12 as well. But it's 5% of the total enrollments in U.S. colleges is international students. So 5% of total admissions is international students. What is that? Does that get people excited, or what does that mean?
This has been a very positive episode, so I don't want to be a downer at the end here, but I think it does speak to a little bit of a warning sign for both our high schools and our colleges. The reality about the US and enrollment information and enrollment data that we have is that there's a declining birth rate, which means essentially you have less and less domestic kids and domestic students that will be enrolling in your program in the next anything from 3 to 15 years as that wave pushes through. It's important to know that, because how do you make up those numbers? Schools don't just downsize themselves.
Right.
And even if you do downsize yourself, there has to be some strategy, some thinking about what number of students do I want to have? How am I going to make up the lack of domestic kids? How am I going to make up for that lack of domestic students? And we have some great case studies to share with you, but international education certainly is one of the ways in which colleges and high schools can not only add that diversity, not only add that financial component that these international kids bring, but make up for the number of, or the decline in domestic kids that you're having. So, or we're going to be seeing in the next 5 to 10 years. A declining birth rate essentially means, for those of you that may not know, less people are being born in the US. And when less people are born, there's less people that can come to all these wonderful colleges and schools that we have. So really, I urge all of our admissions, people in admissions departments, deans of colleges, principals of schools, presidents of schools, enrollment management, to think about strategically, as we see a decline in domestic students, what can we do to increase our total number of students, or to maintain our total number of students? Because that essentially is what runs a school. That is how budgets are formed. So when we think about that, international education certainly is a great way for us to make up those numbers. 5% is fairly little. There's space for growth on the international side for schools at the high school level and probably at the college level as well. But again, you've got to be thinking, if we are going to be seeing this wave of decline in domestic kids in the next 3 to 15 years, again, as that wave comes on in different areas of the country, what are we doing today to address what's going to be happening there? Because if you get to a year and suddenly realize you've got a 20% less, 20% less domestic students enrolling, that's too late to, in that moment, go, oh, I'd like more international students. You've really got to be setting that groundwork now. So again, connect with Cambridge Network. Let's have a conversation about what can we be doing to build and to maintain a robust international student, both international population, both at the high school and at the college level.
Yeah, it's good, and I love that you're keeping it real. Like, keeping it real. Yes, we have good positive statistics, but we got to think the future too. So it's good. That is all that I had prepared for us today. But if you're interested in looking into more stats, Open Doors really does a good job breaking it down, giving you country by country, student by student, different categories. So I'll put that link in our description too, if you want to check it out. I do know they have some subscriptions to be able to get that information, but I do think there's like a blanket, just there for you to look through if you want, or if you just want to see if they're a credible place. I'll put that right in our bio.
Awesome. And Mariah, I'm sure you're going to put some of that stuff in the show notes. This episode, I think, has provided a lot of insight at the beginning of this year for our schools, for our colleges. The one thing that I want to end on is I get many programs at this time of the year saying, are we too late? The fall enrollment season is in sort of full go. We're getting to the end of that spring enrollment season now. Are we too late? Absolutely not. The peak enrollment season for fall, which is the biggest enrollment season, has pushed later and later as the market saturation has continued. So if you are in a place right now where you're going, we are not seeing enough applicants, what can we be doing to build this program? How can we maintain our student numbers? Connect with us. Now's the perfect time to start, thinking about how you want to maintain that. We've got great solutions at Cambridge Network. If for nothing else, let's just have that conversation. We love educating people on what's happening in the market. We're all in this, to provide quality services for our students. And I think that's the number one factor that'll make any conversation worth your while. So I appreciate all of our listeners. I think that's my hope for 2023 is that we continue to build our listenership and that we have such great people listening to this, and we hope we can provide some value. So thank you for tuning in on episode number 1 of 2023. Mariah, any final thoughts from your side?
Yes, just one quick, and it's not on the same topic, but for those who are listening that have not seen yet, we have another Connecting Communities event at the end of this month on January 26th. It's a free event. We have a specialist coming in that's going to be talking about language and culture and how to cultivate that in your campus or in your school. She's incredible. We're really excited. Follow us on social media to get that invite.
Awesome. Absolutely love it, Mariah. As always, thank you for your organization, and to all of our listeners, we'll catch you around the next episode of the Cambridge Insider Podcast. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Cambridge Insider Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to never miss an episode. For more Cambridge updates, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Have a great week and stay connected.